The Scott Genius has always been designed to be a very versatile bike, and this is the latest edition. It's had a full frame redesign, but one of the really cool features about this bike is you can swap out the two different wheel sizes really easily. So in this video, I'm going to try the 27.5 wheels, swap them out for 29, and let you know how it feels on the trail, how it actually changes the ride characteristics of the bike, how it stacks up against the clock, and ultimately try and decide which ones I prefer the best, but also give you guys hopefully a bit of an insight as to how it affects the characteristics of this bike. But first, let's get back to the workshop for the nitty-gritty. Right, let's start off with some facts in the workshop about these wheels. The 27.5 wheel has a 2.6 inch tyre, the 29er has a 2.4. Let's start with the weight. So 27.5 weighs in at 1.87 kilograms and the 29er weighs in at 2.12, so 25 gram difference. Don't forget that's just for one wheel, so when we've got a pair of 29er wheels, they're actually going to be 50 grams heavier. Don't forget that's actually rotating mass, so that does make more of a difference than just static mass on the bike. So I'd expect I'm going to be able to feel that on the trail, and I would expect the 29er to actually sort of plough through rough stuff a little bit better and carry at speed a little bit better, but be a bit harder and slower to accelerate and decelerate. The 2.6 inch tyres on the smaller wheels of course are wider than your average mountain bike tyre, getting up to those plus sizes, but also they're deeper, and that will make a big difference to how the bike feels. It's about 10 millimeters deeper, so when we talk about the whole diameter of the wheel, it's about 20 mil difference, so 20 mil bigger on the 29er. That does mean that the angle of attack when you're rolling over bumps is going to be lowered on the bigger wheels, so it should roll over those bumps a little bit faster. Talk about tyre pressure as well. On the plus size tyres, you get away with running, I find, a couple of PSI lower because that extra volume of that tyre. You can get away with running slightly higher pressures on the bigger wheel. So from those numbers, I think on the trail, I would expect the 29er to feel heavier, feel smoother, but harder to start and stop. 27.5, I would expect a bit more grip because of that wide tyre. I would expect the bike to feel a little bit more lively and be able to change direction a little bit easier and stop quicker. So how do the wheels actually affect the geometry of the bike? So let's look at the head angle first. It's slightly slacker on the 29er, 65 degrees versus 65.6, so not a huge amount. Bottom bracket is going to change slightly, so it's 6 millimeters higher on the 29er, so it's not going to corner quite so well, but you do have more clearance for pedaling through the bumps. A big one here for me, I think, is going to be the BB offset. So you've got 7.5 mil more offset on the 29er, so it feels like you're stood sort of more down and into the bike on the 29er. That definitely helps with trying to get through the bumps. You're going to drive that bike a little bit better. Okay, enough of that chit chat in the workshop. Let's do the fun part. So I've been riding this bike with the 27.5 wheels for probably 2 or 3 months now. It feels great. It feels like you can get really rowdy on this bike, really aggressive down the hills. It doesn't feel like a true sort of plus bike to me. So plus tyres, I find the biggest disadvantage really is in the mud where they float. They don't really dig in. It doesn't feel like that in this bike. The tyres are 2.6, but the tread's evenly spaced. So they clear the mud, it digs in. It feels like an aggressive little bike. So it's time to try out the 29er wheels, and I've not tried them in this bike yet, so I'm excited to stick them on, see how it feels. I actually raced a lot of enduro on 29er wheels, so I think this bike could work really well. 150mm travel, great for British enduros, not quite EWS, you might want a little bit more travel for that, but for my style of riding, I think this could be a rocket ship on 29er wheels, but I'm looking forward to trying them out. So I've got a set of 29er wheels set up with tyres, both are tubeless by the way. So it's actually really simple to swap just the cassette and discs over. So realistically, you could have 2 sets of wheels for this same bike and swap them over as you please. Cassette is on, time for the rotors. One final thing to do is just to flip the chip. The chip has been flipped, the wheels are on, and don't they look big? Actually, I can see a lot of wheels sticking out in front of me. The tyres are quite narrow. I'm back on 2.4s now, so let's go give them a ride. Right, I've put a time in on the big wheels now and it felt good. Felt like a really consistent run. Felt like 29ers always have done for me when I've raced them enduro. So on the stuff at the top where it's quite a mellow gradient, but it is a bit chattery with bumps, it felt like I was absolutely flying. It felt seconds faster than the smaller wheels. But when it got a bit more technical, it feels like I have to be a little bit more cautious. So yes, they do monster truck over stuff. They don't drop into the holes quite so much. But when I hit something big and I'm really trying to use my body to soak something up, I find that I stick my bum into the back tyre, and I did do it on that run. So I'm 5'10", which is pretty much average height, which is a bit taller than Martin and Blake would have you believe. But I do find that on 29-inch wheels that sometimes I'll stick my bum into that back tyre when I'm really trying to use my legs to soak something up. I guess if I just rode a 29er, I would get used to that, but swapping between them has always been a tiny problem for me. So I'll be interested to see the times because that felt really fast actually. So that's enough about feel. Let's talk about results and the time. Which one was the winner? So it was the 29er, but there was nothing in it. I did a 142 on the 29er, 143 on the 27.5, so only a second in it. But the interesting part for me comes when you look at the splits. The top section of that track was fast, flowy, stuff where actually it felt really fast on the 29er, but I was 3 seconds slower up there, so not an inconsiderable amount. But it was 4 seconds faster on that rough lower section. I think we can say that's down to that rollover. So I'm hitting all those bumps, and there were some big braking bumps down there. The 29 just doesn't dip in quite so much. It's less tiring to ride, but also faster over those bumps. So actually for me, that's a really interesting test. And as a racer, I'm gonna go with the faster wheels. I've been riding that bike an awful lot with the 27.5, so I think it's time to leave the 29ers on there. Feels great fun to me. I think the biggest disadvantage with 29ers is stopping the bike. I've always felt that when I've tried to race the bike, and there wasn't much of that on that test, so I'll have to bear that in mind in the future. But for now, I'm sticking the 29ers on there. It's one of those great features, I think, of some of these modern bikes where it's really easy to swap out wheels. Realistically, you could have 2 pairs of wheels for your bike at home, the smaller and the bigger, and just swap them around for different conditions. Or you might find you prefer one or the other and just sell the other wheel. So actually I think it makes the bikes really versatile. If you have any questions about this video, leave them down below because I'll be doing a follow-up video on the GMBN Tech channel so I can get into the nerdy facts. If you want to see how a tyre is made, click up there for a Continental factory tour and down there for the Scott Genius first ride. Give us a thumbs up, like this video, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done already.